Hi, Isaiah. So this is going to be your feedback for your Persepolis final essay. So we're going to read it here together with you, and then we're going to look at the rubric, and let's see what you got. All right. I'm going to change my mouse here. Oops. Okay. So in your intro, it says, in war, people are impacted bad. So let's say badly. And their family has... Okay, so even though family is technically more than one person, we treat this as like a singular noun. So it's just like a single person. So their family has to move to another place. In Persepolis, and it's good that you capitalized it here, and typically we want to like underline it or italicize it in some way. And here you did italicize it, but like because all of your text is italicized, it doesn't stand out. So in Persepolis, there is war and revolution and a lot of killing. People are being tortured and people are being taken away from their family, and people are arrested for nothing and change their identity because it's a lot of people being executed. Okay, so I like the ideas that you have in this sentence. It's just super, super long. If you notice like how many ands I had to read, like and is right here, and. Okay, it's just a really long sentence, so we want to make sure that we just like break it up. Okay, so overall, it's a pretty good overview. You did have a lot of details, but again, just a very long sentence, and it's a little awkward to read. And then your thesis, it says, as a result of the revolution and war, Margie was mad at God and she rebelled and was frustrated by the government. So because this is a list of 3 things, we don't need the and here. We can just put a comma. Okay, so Margie was mad at God, comma, she rebelled, comma, and was frustrated, let's say, with the government. Okay, so overall, a really good intro. Just a couple of words here and there that needed to be added, but overall, your ideas are pretty clear. Let's move on to your first body paragraph. All right, this says, one way that Margie changed, so we want to make sure that this is past tense, due to the Iranian Revolution. Okay, again, Iran is like a place, so we want to make sure that's capitalized. And revolution, we also want to capitalize because it's just a title of something. Okay, so I'll just make sure we put a comment there. Okay, just to remind you for next time. Okay, so one way that Margie changed due to the Iranian Revolution and war is that she lost her belief in God because he let Uncle Anoush die. Okay, great topic sentence. And then your evidence, according to the text, Margie says, shut up, you, get out of my life, I never want to see you again. Okay, and you properly cited it, so that's great. This shows that Margie was close to God, and now she lost her beliefs in God and doesn't want to see him again. Okay, so doesn't. So here in the sentence, Margie is technically the subject. So we want to make sure that the verb agrees with this subject. So Margie doesn't want to see him again. This is important because you can't always put your trust in God to do something for you. Okay, so I like the ideas here, and I think it does show like some basic understanding of what happened. However, I would have liked to see you explain this a little bit more. Like, why was she mad at God in the first place? Explain why she was angry with God. Okay, so you probably should have included the fact that she like prayed to God to save her uncle. Okay, but then her uncle died, and so she views it as, uncle died, so she views it as God letting her down. Okay, and as far as the lesson, you can't always put your trust in God to do something for you. I like that you attempted to put a theme here, but because this essay topic is mainly about how war and revolution changes people, I would have liked this lesson to be about war or revolution. Connection to theme. Okay, so connection to the theme should be more focused on how war and revolution changes people. It changes people in general, not just Margie. Okay, so for example, maybe like, okay, loss and trauma can often lead to people questioning their religious faith. Okay, so see how that's kind of a lesson that we can learn from that? Because here, I don't think the lesson is that you can't always put your trust in God, because obviously a lot of people do put their trust in God, but we want to connect it back to like this idea of war and revolution, because it's the idea that war and revolution impacts our religious beliefs, and that's kind of the whole thing about Persepolis. Okay, but overall, all the components of a body paragraph are there. We just kind of need to flesh it out a little bit more. All right, your second body paragraph, it says, another example of Margie's identity and perspective being impacted by the Iranian Revolution and war is that she rebelled against her mother. Dictatorship by smoking a cigarette. Okay, so we want to make sure that we have an apostrophe S because dictatorship belongs to mother here. According to the text, Margie says, no scream in the world could have relieved my suffering and anger. Remember to cite the page number. Okay. This shows that Margie has no place to live and have to live somewhere else. Okay, I'm not sure that the quote shows that. Yeah, because it says, no scream in the world could have relieved my suffering and anger. So this was Margie talking about talking about her emotions after the Baba Levy's home got bombed. So I don't think that Margie was as concerned about not having a place to live. She was more concerned that this war was kind of like affecting innocent people who had nothing to do with the war. Okay, and then you try to connect it to the real world. This is important because it's dangerous and a lot of people can get hurt. Okay, I think this is solid. I think it's could be a little bit more clear, like maybe like war is dangerous. Because when you say it's, I don't really know what it's is. The other issue with this paragraph, though, is this topic sentence doesn't match the evidence. Because you said she rebelled against her mother's dictatorship by smoking a cigarette, but this quote here is not about her smoking a cigarette, so it doesn't really match. So even though the structure is there, the ideas here just don't seem to go together. All right, and then let's move on to your third body paragraph. It says, finally, the last way that she changed after the Iranian Revolution, again, capitalizing this, in war is that she took a new turn and wasn't scared anymore. According to the text, Margie says, as for me, I acted rebellion against my mother's dictatorship by smoking the cigarette. I'd stolen, I always capitalize the I. I've stolen from my uncle 2 weeks earlier. Again, page numbers. Okay. Being very weird. Okay. This shows that Margie wants to be grown and feels like she doesn't have to listen to her mother. This is important because you had rebelled against your parents and go do what you want to do sometimes. Okay, so I think what happened was you mixed up these two topic sentences. So always make sure that we proofread, read things over again before we submit things. Okay, so I would have liked to see you explain this quote a little bit more, because I think it wasn't necessarily that Margie wants to be grown, but because Margie feels like so restricted and held back by the laws in her country, that the only safe way for her to rebel is to rebel against her mom, because at the time she really couldn't rebel against the government. So because she was like so frustrated, she really just felt like she had to rebel in some kind of way, and this was like the safer way to do it. So here I'm not really sure what the theme is here supposed to be, because you're talking about you and go do what you want sometimes. But again, the theme should be about how war and revolution impacts people. So for example, like war and revolution can cause people to become more rebellious because they get frustrated with the rules that they have to follow or all the danger that they see. Okay, or sometimes when they don't agree with the war, they might also rebel. Okay, but again, the lesson or the connection to the world should have been more about the war and the revolution. All right, and then this is your conclusion. As shown above, there's a time that people was at war and people was changing their beliefs. Again, people were changing their beliefs. In the Iranian Revolution and war, space, Margie believes in God and lost it, and have to ask a lot of questions about where she loves. Not entirely sure what you mean by that. It's a little confusing there. The issue is significant because we see that a lot of people are being impacted by the revolution and war. Okay, let's try to be a little bit more specific about being impacted. Okay, like how are they being impacted? Therefore, we must be mindful of our actions in the future that impact the revolution and war. Okay, not a bad conclusion, but in general, it doesn't really say a whole lot. It doesn't really convince me that this issue is important. Okay, so let's go over to the rubric. Okay, so the first part of the rubric is just whether or not you address the prompt. So the prompt was kind of two parts. You had to explain how Margie changed as a result of the revolution and war and how it develops a theme. So the theme would have been like where you explain this is important part. Okay, so 4 means that you maintained a clear and thoughtful claim that effectively addresses all parts of the prompt. You did try to do some themes, but I think this was kind of the only one that was like kind of close to a lesson. And as I said, a lot of your lessons aren't really related to the war or revolution. So I think I'm going to put you a 3 for that one. So you do have a clear claim, but I think overall your ideas could have been a little bit more fleshed out. Okay, development of ideas is just like your explanation. Did you explain the quote? Did you explain how it proves that Margie changed? Demonstrates full understanding, demonstrates understanding. Okay, I think I'm going to give you a 3 for that one because again, the explanation is there, but it's just not quite as detailed as it could have been because a lot of times you don't really connect back to this idea of like how the revolution and war often changes people. Okay, evidence, I think you have pretty solid evidence. Okay, so you do have multiple and relevant concrete details. For the most part, you do cite your sources. I'll still give you a 4, even though you forgot your page numbers a few times, but we'll work on that. The next part is organization. For the most part, you're pretty organized. You have all the things that I was looking for, but because your topic sentence and your evidence don't really match in these last 2, that kind of bumps you down to a 3. Okay, and yeah, and you mostly use formal or academic language. I don't see any words like I or me or my in there. All right, and then conventions is just your spelling, your grammar, and your punctuation. For the most part, your ideas are pretty clear. There's just a few like minor errors that I think if you had just read out loud, you might have been able to catch. So yeah, you contain a few minor errors, but meaning is generally clear. All right, so now what I do is multiply each of these scores by 5 to get your score out of 100. Okay, so Isaiah, your total score for this essay is at 80 out of 100, so basically 80%. So overall, I think it's a really solid essay that includes like all the parts, of an essay, but ideas and connections to the world could be more detailed. Okay. And again, just always make sure that you're proofreading and reading over your essay before you submit it, making sure that everything makes sense. Because I think there are a lot of like mistakes here that you could have easily caught. But overall, I think this is a really solid score for your first essay, and I can only anticipate that you're going to get better with your writing. So I'm really excited to see what you have for me next. All right. Thanks, Isaiah.